Yeah, so after the George Floyd incident, we see that the country pretty much imploded, right? I mean, we see riots and things all over the place, and this isn't a new thing that's just happening, right? The George Floyd isn't just something randomly happened one day, and now all of a sudden people are just becoming aware of it. This is an ongoing situation that's happened for a long time. You mentioned since 1967 with the Qualified Immunity Act that came in. But so we have these conversations, and it's, whoever funds it or whoever came up with it, we have this thing called defund the police. And so now you have both sides of the political spectrum saying, okay, what does that defund the police really mean? Well, a lot of people are going to talk about police reform, right? And why do things need to be reformed in the police? And you mentioned police unions. We mentioned qualified immunity. We could talk about militarization of police. But really, where does that all start? What is special about 1967 that makes it such a pertinent issue today?
Well, I mean, first of all, the whole year 1967, when the whole war on drugs was kind of watershed, but just to limit it to the qualified immunity doctrine, that was when the Supreme Court first created, and yes, the Supreme Court created qualified immunity for police officers in a Supreme Court case, Pearson versus Ray. Now, like most Supreme Court cases, the events took place well before. It was 1961. It was the Civil Rights Movement, and there was these Freedom Riders. There was a group of Episcopal priests, that both black and white, they got on buses in New Orleans, and they were going to travel to Michigan. And their first overnight stop was a small town in Mississippi. And the sight of blacks and whites staying together at the time in Mississippi caused quite a stir, and led to the local police officer basically arresting all these Episcopal ministers, throwing them in jail. Now, the appeals court in the criminal case was kind of like some version of disturbing the peace. So it's kind of like a Barney Fife type character, arrest all these Episcopal ministers and charge them with some version of disturbing the peace. The appeals courts threw out like all but one of the convictions, but still the ministers pursued a civil case under the Civil Rights Act related to 14th Amendment. So they pursued a civil lawsuit against the municipal court judge, who the municipal court judge just really handed out maximum sentences. I don't know what his issue was, but he, like I said, the criminal cases, all but one of them got thrown out. But still, the ministers decided to pursue civil cases as part of their civil rights activities. And that got to the Supreme Court. Now, in the case Pearson versus Ray, the justices acknowledged that the case against the municipal judge, there had been a long-standing tradition of you can't file a civil suit against a judge for basically performing his duties as a judge. Not that judges would ever protect judges. That would never happen, right? But that had been a long tradition in our legal system. And they basically said that, well, in the Civil Rights Act that led to it, they didn't take away that qualified immunity for judges. But then they turned around and said, well, we're going to give the same qualified immunity to the police officer that made the arrest as well. Because even though the statute that the officer arrested on was later found unconstitutional, basically the justice said, well, it was a statute on the book. He was enforcing it. So they created the qualified immunity doctrine, basically just expanded it from judges to police officers. I don't think that the justices had any idea that it would one day be taking to the lengths where it is today. It has been built on, and it has basically, they've added one on another, and it got to the point where a case in 2004, it's a Cajun name, so I'm not real good at French. I think it's Brousset versus Hagen, 2004 case, where the majority of the justices basically said that it was perfectly okay for police officers to kill somebody.